Hello everyone, this is Robert and this is the xTool F1 Ultra. It's an interesting combination diode and fiber laser all in one, and I've had this for several months now and I'm just now getting around to doing this video. It's not really a review, but I just kind of wanted to share my impressions with having this for the last few months so you can kind of get a better idea of what it is, because it does things very differently than most other fiber lasers. So let's get started. As always, please feel free to use the chapters to skip around in this video and find the section that is most interesting for you. This is not really going to be a review in the traditional sense. I'm just going to kind of give you an overview of the machine and some of my experiences for having it over the last few months. That being said, xTool did send me this machine free of charge in exchange for some content. They didn't really discuss anything specifically with me, and they have no control or say over any of the content I make or when I release it or what I release. So they basically just gave me the machine and said, do something, and this is the something I'm doing. I do have an affiliate link down below. If you do like the machine and want to buy one, you can use the affiliate link. You can also not use the affiliate link and just watch this for entertainment purposes only. Doesn't matter to me. All of that being said, what I am going to cover in this video is just kind of the general unboxing, the setup, what it is, what to expect from it, and the things that I kind of like and the things that I don't like, and how I will end up using this machine in my workflow. So that's kind of the content of this video. So let's go back in time and get started with the unboxing of this. I'm not going to talk too much about the unboxing experience. Everything went fine. It was packaged really well. And xTool has really come a long way since I've started dealing with them. Their documentation and their packaging is really top-notch. It honestly is. Everything is extremely well packaged. It can survive even the roughest of transits. And I was happy to see how well laid out and explained everything was. There's not going to be any surprises. You're not going to like accidentally lose a piece. Everything is really, really well packaged. I was also surprised to see how dense everything was packaged. This isn't really that large of a machine, and they fit a lot of stuff into a relatively small package. It was every single little nook and cranny was just tucked full of something. And I don't have like a special version just for content creators or reviewers. This is the exact same model that you would end up getting. And there's just a ton of stuff in here, a lot of little accessories and samples and things like that. So it's always nice to see that when you unbox something, you kind of get a lot of stuff. And this unit is actually a lot more stout than I thought it was going to be. It's a hefty little machine for the size. Okay, so I lied. xTool sent me a few extra things, but most of this is included with the base machine. And depending on when you buy it, they might throw in some of this stuff extra. The foot pedal switch is definitely an extra. I think it's like 40 bucks, something like that. Really nice metal foot pedal switch. This plugs into the back. And this is nice if you're doing a lot of repetitive stuff. You can just have the foot pedal switch on the ground, load something, close it, hit the foot pedal switch, wait a couple seconds, load it, stuff like that. You can do the same functionality with this green button at the bottom. So I don't know, maybe you want the foot pedal switch. There's also this little keypad thing. This is hilarious. It's just a single key switch, and that plugs into the back as well. So it gives you the same functionality as all of this, just kind of adorable and metal and very nicely made. The interesting thing is all of these have this proprietary connector, but then that comes off and it's just a standard USB-C. So my guess is these are just a basic HID compliant, keyboard or something like that, and they're just adapting USB-C into something else. I thought that was interesting. There's a lot of ports along the side and the back for all these various accessories. The screen, this nice, beautiful little touchscreen, does come standard with the machine, which I thought was pretty cool. When I review this stuff, I generally get all the extra accessories. And sometimes I'm like, oh, that looks really cool. And then I find out it's just an extra add-on. This does come with the machine, which is pretty neat. And then you get all of these random materials to play with. You've got some slate coasters, a little necklace pendant thing, the classic black aluminum business cards, this little felt pouch thing, all sorts of different stuff to play with, and then like an example project, and then of course all the manuals and documentation. And their documentation, quick start guides are very, very good, very detailed, and most of this stuff is going to have just a QR code that you go to the most up-to-date documentation, which is what I always use. All that being said, if you are going to get one of these and you're brand new to fiber lasers, they also have these really cool, what do they call this? The material accessory pack, and this one is specifically for the F1 Ultra, and it just has tons and tons of stuff inside. Keychains, brass coins, little pendants, or like dog tags, just a ton of stuff in here. All of it works with the machine, so you can get a better idea of how all of this stuff works together and what the end results are going to look like from engraving all of this. I did end up getting the fume extractor as well as the conveyor. I'm not going to talk about those or cover those in this video. The smoke extractor is extremely straightforward. If you've seen one review, you've seen them all. It's the same one. I have the old school one. And the conveyor is just not something I really want to get into right now because it's just not how I use the machine. It's not for me. They sent it. I'm probably not going to use it, but it looks really well made. So moving on, let's kind of talk about the features and the specs of this thing. In terms of specs and features, the F1 Ultra kind of has everything that you could possibly want. When I first started playing with fiber lasers, there was a lot of things I'm like, man, I wish I could access this over my network. I wish this could be operated over Wi-Fi. I was also like, I really wish it kind of had some kind of control panel or screen, or, oh, I wish it had some sort of motorized focus. I wish it had a camera inside. The F1 Ultra adds all of this and more. So at the base of this, you have a 20-watt fiber laser. And fiber lasers are kind of a new hot thing right now, and a lot of other companies are trying to pass off diode lasers as an actual fiber laser. You can have an infrared diode that you run through a galvo head. I'll explain that in a second. And you can call it a fiber laser, but it's really something different. And I really don't want to get into the nuances in this video because it's very complicated and technical, but a diode is not an actual fiber laser. I was curious if this was actually a true fiber laser because of the form factor. It's very small. So as soon as I got this, I actually took it apart, took off the back panel, and saw that there is actually a Raycus fiber source in the back of this thing. Raycus is kind of the best known brand for making these fiber laser sources. That is the same brand that's in my cloud ray that I have over there. It has a 50-watt Raycus, but this has a 20-watt Raycus fiber source in it. Awesome. In addition to that, it also has a blue diode laser, so you can use them together. The reason that you would want one over the other, fiber is really only going to mark or engrave metals, things with a lot of pigmentation, some leather, things like that, whereas a diode is going to be able to do a whole other host of materials. So if you want to do wood, cork, things like that, you're going to want the diode. And so by combining them into one machine, you can either do kind of multi-material things, so you can do like engraving on one material and then do something else, or you can just have a wider range of materials to engrave. And engraving is what this thing is going to be really, really good at. Cutting performance, I'll talk about that later. You're not going to use this machine to cut, but engraving, it'll engrave pretty much anything that can be engraved. The other thing that I really like about this is the engraving area is one of the largest out there. Most fiber lasers are going to be 100 by 100, 150 by 150, and the really big ones are going to be 200 by 200. This is 220 by 220. They just wanted to get that little extra bit in there so that they could say that they're the largest. But 220 by 220 is 8.6 inches, which is pretty generous, especially given the size of this machine. This is like 50% smaller than my cloud ray, which is a 200 by 200. In addition, you have this nice enclosure. A lot of other fiber lasers are just kind of the open frame. The fumes just kind of go everywhere. The Lasers can be reflected all into your eyeballs. This has a protective cover as well as dust and fume extraction kind of built in. It really kind of has everything you could possibly want. And the cherry on top is it works with the xTool software, which is becoming one of my favorite pieces of software ever. And you've got the accessory ports. You've got this like fire suppression system that you can buy optionally. And then of course you have the conveyor belt if you want to go up to 220 by 500 millimeters. Feature-wise, this thing kind of has everything. But wait, there's more. In addition to all of that, this also has batch processing, deep engraving, and curved surface engraving. The curved surface engraving is pretty unique to xTool, I think. I haven't seen anyone else really doing it. It can basically use the camera and everything to map out the curvature of the object that you're engraving and then actually adjust the head. It's pretty slick and very intuitive. It's a little bit time consuming, but the software does everything and it's pretty reliable. I've used it on the xTool P2CO2 laser, same software, and it works out pretty well, and they've implemented in this, works out really nicely. It also has the deep engraving, which can basically do one layer, move the head down, do another layer, move the head down, and that's pretty cool because you do have the motorized head, so it's just a matter of putting that together in the software to move the head down, move the head down, move the head down, and get a nice deep engraving. The batch processing, in theory, takes an image of what's on the build plate and then kind of identify objects. I haven't had good luck with it. I think that's the one thing that's kind of a gimmick to me. Ideally, you would just have the conveyor lined up. You would just throw a bunch of dog tags down. Oh, it would recognize it, engrave the design, and spit them off the side. In theory, that's what it does. In practice, I haven't been able to get it to work like that. You'd be better off just making a jig and jigging it up every time, removing the jig, placing in a new jig, relying on AI and vision and stuff. It's not going to work 100% of the time. So that's the good. The bad is the structure of this thing isn't my favorite. It's a very complicated machine. It has a lot of stuff in here. So you've got this head that moves up and down. The head is separate from this shield here. So they move independently, which is pretty cool. But that means they're very wobbly. This is super wobbly. If you press it from the side, it's almost impossible to kind of get it lined up. And the head itself is really loose and wobbly. I was really disappointed to see this. When I took this apart, I saw, and it's well made. It's just that this head will always kind of nod down a little bit because you have the head, the back, and this all kind of moving in a very small area. So mechanically, this is just always going to happen. This is okay if you don't bump or nudge the machine ever. When I was doing this skull engraving, this was one of the deep engravings I was talking about, you couldn't nudge the machine at all, because if you do this with the head, then that whole portion of the engraving is going to be off. You can't really touch or mess with the machine when it's running because all of this just kind of wobbles. And I don't know if this is a deal breaker. Most jobs are going to be like a minute or less, maybe even like 20 seconds. The thing is very fast at quick engraving, but if you're doing deep metal engraving, this will take hours, especially if you're doing the entire bed and you're doing a huge metal engraving. It's going to be hard to not nudge or otherwise upset this machine for several hours. Even just kind of maybe lifting the head could wobble a little bit. So that isn't my favorite thing. It looks nice. It generally operates fine, but it's not as structurally sound as I would like. And for this reason, I would never use this in an industrial or business environment where you're doing batches all day. The other thing that I really don't like is the dust and fume extraction. If you're doing a lot of metal on this, metal dust is going to get everywhere, and you're running everything through this little fan out the back. Yes, you can add an external dust extractor. That's kind of what they have, and that's how I was using it. But you're running everything through this little fan, And even on the back, there's these little louvers in the way. All of that just gets absolutely clogged with dust particles. And metal dust is really, really nasty. So you're going to be cleaning this thing out a lot. And even just doing this one job with this relief, the whole thing was just covered in metal dust. Doing one brass coin, it's going to get covered. So I really wish there was some sort of better extraction, maybe a washable, replaceable filter that went right there to catch most things, but this machine's going to get nasty real quick. Like literally after one job, you're going to have to clean it out. So those are the things I don't like. Nothing's really a deal breaker, but you know, they're significant enough to mention. All right, everyone, grab a cup of coffee or a cup of tea and let's talk about fiber lasers in general. So a fiber laser kind of has three main components to it. You actually have the laser source, you have the galvo head, and then you have the F theta lens. At the actual laser source, this is a 20 watt Raycus. My QS50 Cloud Ray is a 50 watt. It does some magic and generates some amount of laser power. And then that goes out of a fiber optic cable, hence fiber laser. There are different power levels. They can go generally, I think, like from 15 to 20 watts up to about 100 watts. There's also two different types. There's just the standard, and then there's also MOPA. MOPA is a completely different type of fiber laser source that can actually do colored engravings on metal. I know that the xTool and some others claim that they can do colored engravings, but it's really limited to stainless steel and it's limited to a few different colors. MOPA is kind of on a whole different league and they're quite a bit more expensive. I know someone would ask, these are not actually MOPA units. So you have the laser, it leaves the fiber optic cable, then it goes off into the galvo head. The galvo head is basically just a series of mirrors on motors that steer the laser around. It's coming straight down and the mirror pushes it over that way, moves it this way. It's just a way to steer the laser beam around. This isn't like a traditional 3D printer or diode laser or CO2 laser where it has a physical moving gantry. The laser beam is always in the middle and it's being steered around by those mirrors. This creates a problem. If the laser source is here and it's moving down to the bed, let's say it's 6 inches, if it goes over here to the outer edge, it's going to be out of focus. An F theta lens, much like this one, is actually used to flatten that focal plane. It is going to be a spherical focal plane because the laser is coming from a fixed source. This lens will actually compensate for that and give you a flat focal plane. And these lenses come in many different sizes. This one happens to be a 100 by 100. Obviously, the Cloud Ray is used, or xTool is using a 220 by 220. It might overscan a little bit, being like 250 by 250. My Cloud Ray back there has a 200 by 200, and that is basically just the size of the focal plane that it can flatten to. So you have your laser source, your galvo head, and your F theta lens. That's pretty much all there is to a fiber laser. Yeah. So what is xTool really adding to it? Well, it's everything else that goes along with it. It is the mechanism, the focus system, the structure, and the controller, the interface, and the software. That is where fiber lasers differ. This has a Raycus, my Cloud Ray has a Raycus. Most of them are going to have that. I think my GWIC also had a Raycus fiber laser source. Those components are basically off the shelf and interchangeable. The difference that you get between the different machines is the software, the interface, and quite frankly, the quality of life features that go along with it. The software is a really critical differentiator between the different models. Most of them are just going to run on Lightburn or EasyCAD, and so they're all going to have the standard interface that just interfaces with those two pieces of software. xTool is a little bit different because they have their own software. The focus mechanism is going to either be manual or it's going to be motorized. So those are really the differences that you get between the different models. They're all going to have basically the same optics. They're going to have basically the same galvo head, and they're going to have basically the same fiber source. difference in power quality, of course, but the difference comes in the actual software and the quality of life features that go along with the rest of the machine. So previously I talked about how fiber lasers really weren't well suited for cutting, but they're very good at engraving. And especially something like the F1 Ultra using a 20-watt fiber along with a 20-watt diode laser, you can engrave pretty much anything with really good results. But why isn't it good at cutting? This little 2x4 is a visual demonstration. So you have a fixed laser source here at the top coming out of the lens, coming out of the galvo head, and when it comes straight down, you're cutting this thickness of material. However, when you steer that beam off to the side, it is now coming at an angle, and this is a different thickness according to the laser beam than this is in the middle. This is actually a much deeper cut, and it's at a bevel. So when you go further and further out, now you're getting kind of an angled cut because that laser is still in the middle. Further out towards the edges, you're going to get more of a bevel cut and an angled cut, and it's going to be deeper. So anything with any substantial thickness, you're going to run into an issue with that. If you're cutting something that's like 1 millimeter or thinner, it's not going to be an issue. You won't notice it. For very thin things like those business cards, the aluminum business cards, thin leathers, things like that, it'll be perfectly fine. But anything thicker than that, you will notice a significant bevel, and the cutting performance on the outside will be very different than how it is on the inside because it's kind of thicker. According to the laser, it's going to be thicker on the outside than it is on the inside. So these things really should be used for engraving purposes only, or very, very thin cutting only. Hello to anyone that is skipping directly to the conclusion. I don't blame you. I do the exact same thing. So trying to sum up this laser, the F1 Ultra, I think, is probably one of the easiest, most accessible, and user-friendly lasers on the market. The downsides is that it's only a 20-watt fiber laser. I kind of didn't mention that previously. I really wish there was a higher powered version of this. 20 watts for metal gets to be a little bit low. If you're doing wood, stone, other things like that, 20 watts totally fine. But when you start getting into metals, it would be nice if it was a 50, 60, 100 watts, but the form factor would be a lot different. So 20 watts is doable, but I wish it was a little bit more. The structure of this whole thing, it looks beautiful, but it leaves a little bit to be desired. The head nodding and tilting is not my favorite thing. It is usable. It's just something that you got to watch out for. Don't bump it. Don't run into it when it's running. So that's a little bit of a problem, and the fume extraction could be better in my opinion. But I don't think any of those things are deal breakers. You can get a much cheaper 20-watt fiber laser from any number of companies. Tons of different companies make an off-the-shelf 20-watt fiber module with a galvo head, with an f-theta lens in some form factor. You can absolutely get something cheaper, but getting something with the built-in dust extraction, with the built-in enclosure, and quite frankly, all of the quality of life features that the F1 Ultra offers, that's what makes this special and makes it worth me doing a video on. Their software is the best in the industry. I hate doing image editing stuff, and their software makes it really easy. It has everything in there. Their easy set material library, I think that's what they call it. The fact that for most of their materials, they have a little card that shows all the power and the speed settings, and you just click the one that you want. It applies those settings and you go. It's not always perfectly accurate. Sometimes you do have to make some adjustments and tweaks, and it doesn't have every material out there. But the fact that these things exist in their software shows their commitment to their kind of customer. Their customer base is very much the Etsy shop, the person doing crafting projects. It is not me out here in my garage. I'm looking around, I've got an Avid CNC, I've got a Tormach over there, I've got a metal lathe. This really isn't geared towards me, but man, do I love the quality of life features of this. My wife loves xTool because she's kind of started using these and she loves the software. It's easy. She doesn't want to know everything. She doesn't want to tweak and hassle with it. She just kind of wants to go in there, throw some material in, use the camera to line it up, hit go, and move on with the rest of her project. If you are more of a crafter or a maker and just doesn't want to get into the tweaking and the technology, xTool makes it really easy. So that's kind of all I got to say about it. I really, really do like this. It's not really the build quality, it's just some of the design decisions aren't my favorite, but using it at the end of the day, this is the type of product that I will end up using more because it's more accessible. I can sit inside in the comfort of my office and design some stuff, load up the software, send it over to this, select it on the little touchpad. It just has really nice quality of life features. You can absolutely get something cheaper, but you're going to miss out on all those features. So thanks for watching. Hopefully this gives you some more information about the F1 Ultra. As always, I do have an affiliate link down below. You are not being forced to use it. If you don't feel that that is justified, please don't use it. No one's forcing you to buy anything. This is just for informational purposes only, since I have spent some time with this. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video. Bye.